Okay, so I'm just going to plug this in for a little bit longer.
Vamos a hacer ajo, cebolla para hacer un sofrito. Vamos a hacer un sofrito con una salsa, ya veréis, una salsa interesante.
Okay, so I'll just keep reading to you. So this is where we ended. You're going for the rose. And I go, your dismissiveness is your elitism, by the way. And you don't even think the person is worth your neighbor, so you pull the plug midway. Just to remind them how nothing they are anyway, and goodbye and whatever you say and whatever you want, I'm going to remember you this way. It's control. I mean, it's like no one is ever enough for you. But you like to expect to be let down. Egg it on, even create it. No one is good with good intentions and loves you, and you don't trust shit, but then it's a trait I can relate to. Yeah, no. That the elitism you are harping on. That's the elitism you are harping on. Okay. But I'm a flawed human. I shouldn't be a shock to anyone, but I've owned my shit, not just to you, but the world. And besides, at the depths of the hollow, I know its depths is a hollow I know you can fathom. You're right. Cool. Glad you think you've owned whatever. You're right. So no more talk about that. Thanks again for being there for me and loving me, even though I didn't see it or appreciate it. This is long, so. You swear I can't be accountable to shit, I'm gonna read it a little fast, or own anything, and yet I feel like I'm the only one that's willing to say what it is actually in itself on terms of self-responsibility. It seems like you are seeing what you want to see, molding me into a definition that's convenient. You're throwing a lot of insults. I don't like it. It's distracting and hurtful, more in that you want it and less that it stings, so it's a little hard to keep track. Let's see. Self-righteous. Correct. Undoubtedly, I have this trait, and it comes from a lifetime of making a deliberate sacrifice to make the right choice. The egoic paycheck is that I get to be right, and I admit I like the feeling. But I can admit also when I'm wrong. I might not always see it transparently, but I'm usually somewhat open to exploring the option. I'm not too attached to the feeling to not be able to do that, and I won't, however, own other people's responsibilities. That's on them. Sensitive to being called a white girl. I'm not sure if this is a joke. I am a white girl. You remind me of this all the time. That's like sensitive to being blonde. And I gotta go with Louis C.K. It's not a bad deal. I'm in no way complaining. I acknowledge the privileged stance you blatantly made up that I flipped out. That never happened. What the fuck? What the fuck else would I be called? Syrian? I mean, come on now. Whose script are you reading? Bully, you made your case, cited your events, and actually it makes me feel better about me, so thanks. High school Denny's, I took joking too far. I apologize, it was rude and callous, and with the weight of your recent move, you didn't need it. But the other two examples aren't me bullying, which is interesting that you turned it around like that. Rosita was you, point blank, being very rude and out of bounds. I'd say this across the board, except I don't know what you're recalling with how I treated you the first night, so I won't make such a sweeping statement. I took you in, extended your stay, smoked you out the whole time, even drove you to LA to look at a house. The fact that you didn't seek every housing possibility is on you. First night possibility aside, I wasn't being mean, but you were, and purposefully. You left on another hangout session with Larry, and when he came back, you wanted to move out. I'm not blaming you for a sudden, no-notice choice. That's timing couldn't have been at a more vulnerable point, as he waited until I had just quit my job. I wondered about this now, as the company goal is to get me out of contract, i.e. out of LA, which means I couldn't afford a rent increase or another down payment to a new place, leading to company complications and me living in the toxicity of my father's house. Larry's random plan change didn't come from nowhere. It came from conversation or pre-planning. People can talk behind whoever that they want behind their back, but I don't know, it felt like a bit of a violation, and in hindsight it might have been way more than that. You guys were tucking away and talking so much to each other that you seemed to not care about anything I had to contribute. In fact, I was interrupted constantly. It was nuts, really inappropriate. My feelings were really hurt, so I left. My episode came from LA, which I worked 6 days a week for, falling apart in an instant, and I guess my relationship and possibly our friendship as well, and not feeling able to do a thing to stop it while watching you play your games like you were amused with your own bullshit. You relished like a motherfucker, and I was like, wait, this is sadistic. I still think that. Saw your dark side, didn't like it. The night I quit my job, what you were doing was off the charts. 2 hours I watched you play your game at my expense. Drug-fueled episode? Right. You saw me take drugs other than weed? No, you didn't. That's why you don't have proof. I'm not worried you have proof, because it was in the weed. So, why is me getting drugs something to scoff at / use as a scapegoat? It's not my choice, not my responsibility. Another falsely stated, vacuous claim that accepts no responsibility by you. I'd like you to acknowledge the ways in which you were being deliberately hurtful. It was and is not okay, and somewhere you know that, but history predicts you won't / can't, and are changing the story to that you got kicked out. Yeah, at the time you were supposed to leave. I held my boundary. If you're offended, okay, I guess, but don't exaggerate to fit your uncomfortability. I left to give you a house I felt you needed more than I could have